Hello, everyone, and welcome. Welcome to Backchat Live. Welcome to Move with Scoliosis. If you are new here, this is our channel all about movement with scoliosis. My name is Jaureguiberry. I'm a Pilates and yoga teacher. And yes, today we're going to be talking about sciatica and scoliosis. And I can't believe I haven't actually talked about this subject in the, I don't know how many years it's been now, probably about 8 years that we've been doing this. So yes, so thank you to everyone who's been asking for this, because I think it's a really, really relevant topic and really, really important one. Good. So feel free to let me know if you are here live. Of course, feel free to ask me any questions. I will do kind of a little bit of an overview of sciatica and why this is relevant for us with scoliosis, and of course the things that we can do as well to help us with sciatic pain. Good. So I can see a few of you starting to come in here into the live chat. So I'll keep an eye on the chat as well. Right. Make sure to let me know that you're hearing me okay as well. Now, we did have a little bit of a break with our back chat. Basically, we got a new puppy, a little cockapoo, just about a month ago. And that literally turned my world upside down for a while, still is. So we did have to kind of slow down a little bit. I had to slow down. I had to dial it right back. But we are back now with our back chat, and we've got some great topics coming up for you as well. So make sure you keep tuning in, and we're doing this every first Thursday of the month. Good. Lovely. I can see some of you joining the chat here. Hi, Laura. Laura is here from Buenos Aires. Good. So we are talking about sciatica, and I'm going to start to share my screen here so we can have a look at, and I'm sorry if you are listening to this obviously on Spotify or on your podcast app. You can have a look at this on YouTube as well. But I just wanted to make sure that we all know what we're talking about. So this is the sciatic nerve here that you can see on the screen right now. And I try to describe it. It's the longest and biggest nerve in the body. And it basically, if I start turning this around, if it lets me, we can see it from the front here. It has a few kind of little branches here at the top. And it starts in this area, which is the sacrum. And we've got the lowest lumbar vertebrae here as well. So we're talking kind of the L4 to, I think it's about S3 area. So if you are familiar with those terms, then you know what we're talking about. So it's this kind of big nerve here that you can see there. And obviously we've got two branches, one going down the right leg and then one going down the left leg as well. So really, really important to know the location. So let's turn this around again. So this is what we're talking about here. All these little endings, they are kind of going into that area where the lumbar vertebrae, the lowest lumbar vertebrae are, so the base of your spine and sacrum here. So this is the area that we are talking about. And we do need to understand this to be able, obviously, to help us with that as well. So let me get myself back here for you. Okay. So I'm hoping that kind of gives you kind of a good idea of where it is, because obviously most of us, sciatica is quite a common term, and we know this is something that is going down the leg, and it's a shooting pain. It's not very nice at all, and it's one-sided. So if you have two-sided pain, then make sure you get this checked out, because that could be something else, and we don't want this. If it's down one side of the leg, there are very often things that you can do to help you to make you feel better. So anyone who's here right now, feel free to let me know. Have you had sciatica before? I'm guessing this is a topic, obviously, that of interest to you. Okay, so why is this important for scoliosis, or to know when you have scoliosis? Scoliosis is a condition that is often paired with lots of other conditions as well. And just because you have scoliosis doesn't mean you will have sciatica as well, but it is something that is very, very common, because especially if your scoliosis affects that lowest part of your spine. And feel free to let me know if you think that's you. So we're talking about specifically kind of rotated pelvis, lumbar curvatures, things like this, where this affects the lowest part of the spine. It's also interesting to know that very often it is actually paired with degeneration. So when we're talking about degenerative scoliosis, it's scoliosis that was diagnosed later on in life. So you might have developed this as an adult. So that's the one where we're like, this can often lead to sciatica and lead to other problems as well. So there are a few reasons. Again, scoliosis is not going to be necessarily the cause of your scoliosis, of your sciatica, but it can definitely make things worse or make things a little bit more challenging. So causes more often are things like disc herniation. That's probably the most kind of common and the most well-known one. And disc herniation happens a lot of times for people who do a lot of flexion of the spine, meaning, for example, think about sitting, right? If you are slouching into your chair, if you are kind of lifting things a lot with a rounded back, these are the sort of things that can make your disc herniation worse or even cause it. And then again, with that, you can very easily start to develop sciatica, which is an irritation of that big chunky nerve that I showed you in the beginning. So that's just one of the things. Stenosis is another one. Stenosis is a narrowing of the spinal canal. So that's another one that can be kind of coupled with sciatica. And then you've got things like spondylolisthesis, which is a very long word of basically describing a vertebrae that is kind of slipped forwards of the one below or above. So these are kind of the main reasons why that nerve could be irritated and could be compressed. So we're talking about kind of anything that creates compression. And if you are a regular to this show, to this podcast, you know I talk about the force of gravity quite a lot, and how the force of gravity is not really our friend with scoliosis. It can be if we use it in the right way. But if we are kind of upright all day long and we have a curvature of the spine, we're talking, this could be an S curvature, could be a C curvature, so 1 or 2, you could have more than 2 as well, then the muscles will start to adjust to this curvature, and they will start to pull you with gravity further into your scoliosis pattern. So this is something important to know. So we start to, and a lot of you might relate to this, maybe as you have developed scoliosis, or maybe later on in life, you've had scoliosis all your life long, you've maybe been diagnosed as a teenager, and then Usually it's around menopause when things are starting to become worse, and when pain is starting to happen, and when you maybe started to notice that you have shrunk a little bit. And I have heard this from so many of my clients. They come to me and they say, Christine, I've lost 2 inches in the last 5 years. And that is a sign of gravity taking over and compression happening in the spine. And that can then start to pinch, obviously, on those nerves as well that are, as we've seen, running down the leg. So I'm hoping that this kind of makes sense in terms of what we are talking about. And maybe you've already, maybe just me kind of talking about this has given you some ideas of what we could maybe do to help us there in our movement practice. Obviously, always the first point of call will be going to see your health professional, of course, get a proper diagnosis. They might do some imaging, they might do an MRI or anything like that to really understand what exactly is going on. Maybe they're giving you some physiotherapy for a few sessions. So all of these things are great. But then obviously you want to take this into your exercise regime as well, and think about the things that you might want to avoid, first of all, when you have sciatica. So feel free to let me know if this has kind of sparked some ideas for you as well. Maybe you've been thinking like, okay, I'm not sure if this type of exercise is actually good for me. Or maybe you've got some exercises where you know already, if I do this, that shooting pain starts to become a little bit worse. And there is no, as always, one size fits all approach for this. But for a lot of people, it's anything that takes you into flexion, especially if you have any type of disc herniation that is coupled with your sciatica. So if you're kind of thinking about rounding the spine, dropping the head, and you might extend your leg and then flex your foot, so drawing the toes towards you. You can't see my feet right now. And if that makes your pain worse, then you know that this kind of tension on the sciatic nerve, so that flexion tension, is not the strategy for you. So then you might want to really think about your posture, especially if you are working in an office, if you are sitting for long periods of time. You might want to really think about finding that elongation. And again, if you are a regular to this podcast, you hear me talk about elongation all the time. So fortunately for us with scoliosis, a lot of the approaches are very similar if you've got sciatica or if you've got scoliosis. So you are going to avoid that kind of extreme rounding of the spine, flexion. And also you're going to think about twisting in that area. So if we are kind of rotating in that area that is possibly already rotated because of scoliosis, you are going to cause, or you're going to compress this area, so make it kind of shorter even more. So that's what we're kind of trying to avoid with sciatica. So we want to kind of create space. We want to lengthen that area. And I'm not saying that this is going to be working for everyone. Obviously, there are other causes of sciatica, but most of the time it's that compression. And again, we've seen that area that we're talking about. So I'm going to bring it up on the screen again. The kind of the lower lumbar vertebrae, L4, L5, and then the kind of the top of the sacrum. That's the area that we're talking about that we are trying to avoid any compression in this area. Yeah, so I'm going to pause here for a moment, just to hoping that this makes sense. So think about, obviously, if you are a regular in yoga, you think about kind of your seated twists, you think about your forward bends, anything like that. We're going to try to kind of eliminate until we feel better with our sciatica, until that pain has disappeared. So that's just in terms of what we're going to avoid, what we're not going to do. But we obviously need to think about what are maybe some of the things that we want to start doing a little bit more of, and how we can, again, create that space in those lower lumbar vertebrae, and how we can ease off that pain a little bit more. So if I come back to our picture here, what we can kind of clearly see as well, we don't have the muscles here, unfortunately, in this picture, but let me turn this person around again. This is the area here of the glutes, right? The glutes and the piriformis muscle as well. So this is the sort of area that you want to make sure that it's working really, really well, that it's strong, first of all, and that it's not kind of tight and gripping. So again, think about some of the things that you can maybe do. And in our Pilates practice especially, we've got some great glute strengthening exercises. In yoga as well, we've got bridge pose if you do it in a way that is kind of engaging those muscles. For example, just as an example, in Pilates, we've got all the side lying exercises, the clam, leg lifts, lying on your side, even in all fours, lifting the legs. So things like that is going to be strengthening that area, strengthening the hips, strengthening the glutes. But a strong and healthy muscle can do both. It can contract and it can release as well. Good. So Laura is asking you, what part of your legs or glutes can you feel the pain caused by a sciatica? Is it always in the back of the leg, or maybe you can feel sciatica in the front part too? So it's not going to be at the front of your leg, that's for sure, but it might obviously be higher up or further down. So, and I'm saying it's not going to be at the front of the leg. This is typically, and we know this from pain neuroscience, it's not always straightforward with pain. So it's not always the case that you're feeling the pain in exactly that area that is maybe irritated or damaged. And kind of nerve pain is a tricky one, obviously, but you've kind of seen that area where it is going along, Laura. So it's starting from the base of the spine, and then it goes more towards the back of your glutes and then down the back of your legs, not the front of your legs. So that might be something else. That might be different muscles as well. Or different nerves. Good. So I'm hoping that makes sense. Good. So your glute strengthening is going to be important. Your glute releasing. So you could think of your. I don't really like the pigeon pose that much for scoliosis. I much prefer the reclining version. So where you're lying on your back, kind of like a figure 4 position. Reclining pigeon pose is a great one. And, you know, there's obviously on my YouTube channel, and I'm not demonstrating today. On my YouTube channel, you've got lots and lots of videos where I show kind of hip strengthening. We've got a great hip strength video here on the channel as well, and then a hip release one as well. And in next week's video that I'm releasing, you are going to have a practice dedicated to sciatica, and everything is done sitting in a chair. So it's going to be really, really accessible and no excuses. So you can do this obviously when you are in your office as well, and when you are just sitting at your desk and taking maybe a little bit of a break. Good. So those were a couple of things already. So we've talked about the hip strengthening, first of all, some of the releasing work. You want to work on elongation of the spine, because remember, we need that space in between the vertebrae. And then you can do some gentle kind of nerve glides and nerve. It's basically bringing the nerve into a little bit of a stretch and a release, a little bit of a stretch and a release. So things like a pelvic tilt, for example, can be really useful for that. Flexing and extending your foot. And coupled with this movement of bringing your chin down towards the chest and lifting your head. So what about one part of the chest up? I don't quite know what you mean by that. So that is certainly something that could help you as well. So these are kind of the nerve glides, and this again in next week's video, you've got some of that coming up as well. Good. And splits, I would not recommend for this, because that is quite an extreme one, and it's just going to pull your sciatic nerve and probably just making it worse. So that's something that I would avoid. Again, it's quite an extreme one. Good. So last point, in terms of exercise, is that we obviously need to build up that strength to hold ourselves in that elongated position as well. So, you know this, I'm going to be talking about core strengthening. So really, really important for anybody with scoliosis and with sciatica as well. So both of these, if you fall into either one of these groups, you're going to have to be thinking about making sure that you are strong to resist that pull of gravity and holding yourself up. So a couple of years ago, or now 3 years ago, actually, I started to incorporate a lot more of that strengthening work into my personal practice. So I trained as a Pilates teacher to bring in much more core strengthening as well. And working with weights and things like that to help me really kind of building up that strength to resist that pull of gravity. So really, really important. And in my membership, we've got both. We've got a yoga class every week, a live class, and then we've got a Pilates class as well, because I do feel that these two work really, really well together. So just one thing, just working on flexibility, not saying that yoga is just about flexibility, of course, but there tends to be more kind of the stretchy poses. Just working on flexibility is not going to help us in the long term with scoliosis. So both yoga and Pilates offer some great, great benefits with scoliosis. Good. And no, I cannot do the splits, and I'm not really interested in learning them either. I might have done maybe when I was a child, but it's really not in my practice at all. Good. So I'm hoping that this is giving you kind of some ideas maybe about your movement practice and what you can do if you are suffering from sciatica. Okay, so Stephanie's saying I have severe advanced scoliosis, stenosis. So we talked about stenosis already. It's that narrowing of the spinal canal. So again, we've got compression, we've got lack of space. Been following you forever. Thanks so much for your channel. You've helped me a lot. What are the best ab poses? Good. And again, I've got some great videos on there. And yeah, I'm thinking about which kind of, there's been some recent ones last year where I've talked a lot more about ab strengthening as well. And what you want to do, Stephanie, especially if you've got stenosis and if you've got severe scoliosis, you are going to be eliminating anything that kind of crunches, that is taking you into that flexion of the spine. And obviously, I don't know where exactly your scoliosis is. I don't know how old you are or anything like that. So I am kind of just saying this from the information that I've got from you right now. But there are many, many other ways that can help you to strengthen that core area. And when we're talking about the core, we're not just talking about the abdominal muscles. So we're not just talking about the outer layers. We're talking about the muscles that support the spine. So they kind of go three-dimensionally or wrap around the lowest part of your spine. It's not just the belly. So that's really the area that you want to strengthen. So you've got your scissor legs, you know, you've got things like that. You've got one leg stretch, anything where you're lying on your back and so Stephanie's saying she's got a 69 degree, I'm guessing, double S curve. So it's quite a severe curvature. Yes, even more important, you're going to be lying on your back, flat on the ground, and then you're doing your strengthening from there. You could add some weights, so you could bring your arms up over the head with weights while you're working with the legs. You could be working in all fours position as well. So your planks, side plank is a great one as well. Anything where your back is in that elongated and more neutral position is going to be great for your strengthening. Oh, 69 years old. Sorry. Sorry. So degree, it could have been the degree of the curvature, but it was, okay, thoracic curvature. Good. Yes. And obviously you need to think about what you can do. And there might be other things obviously going on in your body. Again, scoliosis doesn't come as one condition, unfortunately. A lot of times it is coupled with other things. So there might be later on in life, especially arthritis or osteoporosis. So you need to kind of determine what are the things that you can do. And then obviously also what are the things that you're trying to avoid. And again, with that stenosis, we're wanting to avoid anything like compression. Good. So I'm hoping that this has been helpful. Obviously, if you've missed the beginning, and so Stephanie's saying she's been athletic her whole life, which is great, right? And you've got such a good starting point then, or it's not even a starting point. You're already on your way, right? So there's probably a lot of things that you will be able to do or keep doing. But hopefully this has given you some of the things that you might not want to do. Okay, so people with scoliosis shouldn't skip the strengthening part. No, absolutely not. And yoga in itself, yeah, and I was always one of those people who, so Laura was saying yoga in itself is not enough. It depends on how you do it, but I agree, yoga misses sometimes that focus on the core. And obviously what I love about Pilates as well is that we've got the resistance bands, we've got weights, right? We bring in other things that help us with our strengthening. So she's saying, until my menopause, I thought stretching and lengthening were enough, but it wasn't. No, unfortunately, it's not. And we are losing muscle mass as women, especially from a certain age. So it is really, really important to give it some focus, right? If you're in your 20s and 30s, it is important, but not as much. So that time, you might want to work on staying mobile and making sure you're building all your good habits. But then when you are getting older, you've got to bring in some of those resistance exercises into your practice as well. Good, lovely, guys. So I'm going to leave it at that for today. And I'm hoping that this has given you a good overview of this topic, obviously, of sciatica and scoliosis. If you've missed the beginning, make sure you watch that, obviously. Next week, there is going to be a dedicated practice about, and no, it's not going to be a live practice, but it is a fabulously recorded one by me. And it's done sitting in a chair. And it's going to be really, really good for anyone who has got maybe kind of acute sciatica. Good. Next back chat, which is going to be on the 3rd of April, we're going to be talking about Pilates specifically for scoliosis. So if you are kind of new to this topic, then make sure you tune into that. So Stephanie, that's going to be, might be interesting for you as well. Oh, you're doing Pilates already, walking, bike, weights, perfect. So for anyone who's maybe learning about Pilates at the moment, make sure you tune in for that. I'll tell you what are the things to avoid and what are the things we might want to focus on. Good, lovely. Thank you so much, everyone. And we'll see you for the next chat.